One morning, like any other in the Yukon forest, a piercing scream suddenly shattered the peaceful calm of nature. It was not a sound one would expect here, in the heart of the dense and impenetrable woods. A cry of pain, a visceral scream, a scream of terror, which startled Michael Stone, an experienced park ranger. He knew every corner of this forest like the back of his hand, having spent over 20 years exploring its every nook and cranny. But this scream was different. It didn't match anything he had ever heard before. Was it a bear? An animal in distress? Questions rushed through his mind as he ventured deeper into the woods, determined to find the source of this terrifying sound. The wind blew gently between the trees, carrying with it the usual murmur of the forest. But that morning there was a palpable tension, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. A premonition. Something was wrong. Suddenly the scream rang out again, even more piercing, more desperate. Michael's heart tightened. It was a cry of agony, a call for help. As a park ranger, he was used to encountering injured animals. But this cry was not natural. It came from deep within, like a final attempt at survival. Michael's instincts told him to be wary. A wounded bear, especially a grizzly, could be a deadly danger. But he couldn't ignore the animal's distress. With each step he took, he moved closer to the source of the scream, but at the same time, he felt a growing pressure. The sounds of the forest seemed to dissipate around him, leaving only the mounting anxiety. After a while, he finally arrived at a small clearing, and there in the center, the scene that unfolded before him was shockingly brutal. A massive grizzly caught in an iron jaw trap. Its fur was dirty, matted, and there was a palpable suffering in its eyes. Its right front paw was trapped in the snare, while barbed wire tore at its skin, tightening around its head and limbs like a vice of pain. With every movement, the bear let out a hoarse groan, unbearable to hear. Michael froze. His heart racing, he scanned the scene, torn between the desire to help and the fear of the bear's brutality. It was a complex situation. The animal was huge, injured, and yet a glance at it revealed a much deeper pain. It wasn't just terror, it was pleading. A mix of anger and sadness overwhelmed Michael. Who could have inflicted such suffering on such a majestic creature? The horror of poaching was nothing new to him, but seeing such a severely wounded animal with his own eyes shook him. His hands instinctively reached for his rifle, hanging on his shoulder, but he stopped himself. This wasn't a predator he was facing, but a creature in agony. Slowly, almost mechanically, he set his weapon on the ground, a symbolic gesture to show the bear that he meant no harm. "It's going to be okay, big guy," he whispered, his voice low, but full of reassurance. The bear responded with a deep growl, the ground vibrating beneath it, but Michael kept moving forward, step by step, with calm determination. He knew that every movement mattered. The slightest misstep, and the bear could react out of self-defense. But the urge to help was stronger than the fear. As he got closer, he saw the marks of the trap, the sharp jaws embedded deeply in the bear's flesh. The barbed wire was like iron chains, holding the wounded body captive. He had no choice but to get even closer. With almost surgical precision, he began to remove the traps. First, he tackled the chain paw, using a bolt cutter he took from his bag. He carefully placed the tool and, after several seconds of effort, the jaws of the trap gave way with a sharp snap, freeing the injured paw. A roar of pain escaped the bear, but it didn't attempt to attack. What happened next was even more surprising. The bear, exhausted and enraged by the pain, tried to rise but collapsed under its own weight. Michael knew he had little time. It was not yet free from its wounds. He then moved to the bear's head, where the barbed wire was tearing at its skin, hindering its breathing. Gently, he cut the wire, fighting against the silent pain the bear seemed to endure, but which in a way made it calm, almost resigned. Finally, with almost respectful slowness, he took care of the other injuries, paying attention to every detail. After long minutes, the bear was finally free. But that wasn't the end of the story. The animal, now out of immediate danger, was still in critical condition. Michael then called the Yukon Wildlife Clinic, giving his exact location. But the wait for help seemed interminable. Every second passed like an eternity. Fortunately, a rescue team finally arrived. A veterinarian and two assistants immediately took charge of the bear, administering a sedative to calm it. The transport vehicle started and disappeared into the forest, taking the bear with it, while Michael stayed behind, anger boiling inside him. The healing work was far from over. The bear, now named Bruin, was not yet saved, and Michael knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But what he had experienced that morning would mark a turning point in his life. He promised himself that he would find those who had done this to the animal. They would have to answer for their actions. And so, as the forest took a deep breath again, a new quest began. A quest for justice and protection for all those, like Bruin, who could not defend themselves against human cruelty. This was not just the story of a trapped bear and a man determined to save a life. It was the story of human responsibility toward nature, the necessity of caring for the beings that share our planet. Michael knew that his role as a park ranger was not just to protect wildlife, but also to raise awareness among those who, like poachers, sometimes forget that the beauty of the world lies in respecting every living creature. At that exact moment, as the shadow of the bear disappeared into the forest, Michael felt more connected than ever to the nature he had sworn to protect. The road would be long and full of obstacles, but he knew that as long as he breathed, he would fight for the justice of animals, for the wildlife of the Yukon, for the life of every living being who had no voice.